Section 107 of the Fair Use Act of 1976 provides protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's Joe B and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. We're coming in. I want to seek in the truth about JFK. It's a long-going podcast. And here we go.
And here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is episode number 288. That's right. It is the oldest running podcast on the JFK assassination, often duplicated. But what's that saying, Joe?
Never repeated? No?
Often imitated, but never duplicated. There we go. Real quick, Joe, I found something else. Would you like to hear it? It kind of resembles this.
John D'Angelo.
It's close. Check this out.
Was it George D. Gino? James D. Eugenio.
Hi, Mystic Mark. Anyway, what's up, everybody? All right, Joe, let's go say hi to all of our friends who are hanging out in the comments section with us. We have to thank John right off the bat for his super chat before we even got a word out of our mouth. So thanks, John. What's up? South to West is in the house. Claude and Aunt Udine hanging out, knocking back some Lone Stars. Moose Heaven is in the house. That's right. Nothing like a loose moose running wild on you, baby. Alpha 66, Mike's in the house. Jack, what's up? Bungled is in the house. Trey is here. Sally is here from across the pond, everyone. Hello, Sally. Let's see.
The whole crew.
Chauncey Holt, Colleen, the Rocket Queen is in here. Oh, boy, we are in the house tonight. All right.
Yes, sir. And Mike and I were talking some smack to each other because we are both big hockey fans. And I don't know if you know this, Rob. The Rangers, New York Rangers, have started 7-0. And Mr. Mike and a lot of fans, people here might be fans of the Dallas Stars, who are the number one seed in the Western Conference. And they couldn't meet. So it's been very
that's exciting stuff in the world of ice hockey, folks.
I know. There's not many hockey fans in the JFK community, but there's no hockey game tonight, sir. So we last time we recorded there was, and I missed it for this thing of ours, because you know what? It's an important thing we got.
Well, first of all, off the bat, we need to watch a little something here, Joe, that one of our listeners was kind enough to send us, because we asked for it last show, because we couldn't find it anywhere. And let me look it up here so I make sure.
And our listeners came through.
Jay Summers from the Thunder from Down Under. He sent us. He found the Perry Russo clip when he's driving a cab around getting interviewed. So real quick, I wanted to play that right off the bat so we can comment on it and get that out of the way and move on to the topic of tonight's show. So, Joe, are you ready for this?
I am, sir. Let's do it.
All right. Hopefully this goes well and everyone can hear it. But, I see Roger in the house. What's up, Raj?
Hey, Roger.
All right, let's see if this works, Joe. Hopefully everyone can hear it. I tried this before, and it seemed like everything was going okay. But let's try it again.
Fantasy and lies.
He was not investigating any facts. His only purpose was, and he stated it pointedly, he said, I'm going to take Garrison out of this. He says, you're going down with him. He said, if you want to go, he says, you go with him because he says, you're finished. He says, now there is a way out. And I said, what would that be? He said, you go over to Biloxi, Mississippi. He said, we have a motel over there. He says, you're to walk in the motel. Clay Shaw will be in there, and you're to walk out and state on television that you do not know Clay Shaw, you have never seen him, and that he was never...
Unbeknownst to NBC's investigative reporter, Walter Sheridan, Perry Russo had been pre-wired for sound by Jim Garrison to record their conversation.
You're to state that Oswald was never at Dave Ferry's apartment. And number 4 is you know nothing about any Kennedy plotters or any plot to kill the President of the United States. And I said, if I do that, what do you suppose would happen to me in New Orleans?
Perry Russo is an amazing witness. You have to remember that the defense and the federal government and anyone interested in destroying Jim Garrison's case had 2 years to work on Perry Raymond Russo.
So I said, I wouldn't be able to even live in New Orleans. He says, what state are you interested in living in? And I was caught off guard by this, and so I said, I said, I've always been interested in California. He said, what city? I said, I don't know. L.A., Los Angeles. I said, it's always been the city of dreams.
They worked on one of our main witnesses, Perry Russo, offered him a job in an insurance company in California.
I didn't go to Biloxi because what Walter Sheridan was asking me to do was an absolute lie. Shaw was there, Ferry was there, Oswald was there. Garrison, subsequent to this, indicted him for tampering and obstructing justice. Of course, that indictment fell in federal court. He never went to trial.
What do you think about that, Joe?
That is very interesting. There seems to be some resentment towards Mr. Garrison in that.
No, there seems to be some resentment toward Mr. Walter Sheridan there. Because he very clearly states that he basically, Sheridan tried to bribe him into saying that he didn't see Oswald at Ferry's house. And you know you're balling when you're driving a cab and they paint your freaking name on the side of the hood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He must have been a hell of a cab driver.
Yeah.
For United Cab.
70s. Yeah.
This was the early 90s, bro.
Wow, he's balling.
Yeah. So here he is, 25 years after the fact, contradicting himself once again. So what do we believe about Perry Russo? He says one thing, he says another. It's quite possible, though, that he was compromised or blackmailed into saying certain things at certain times to certain people. Scared of being persecuted for perjury, perhaps. Or wanting to do better himself or get himself off the hook with other things. But like I said in the last show, it's just a sad story for Perry Russo all around. To go from, studying law at Tulane University to breaking into somebody's house in 1971 and stealing $8,000 and ending up as a cab driver. And then, but yeah, that's the Perry Russo story. And thanks again to Jay Summers for sending it in. I remembered it fondly and it did not disappoint. And I see someone with a great name in the comments. Freddie Ruger. Poor Gruber can't air his BS stories because he didn't pay his internet bill. Man, that sucks, Joe. I mean, you even have internet in the Catskills, bro. He couldn't steal Wi-Fi in the middle of LA? I mean, come on. Come now. Come. But anyway, You're muted and nobody can hear you. There you go. What were you saying, Joe?
I said it must have been all the places in LA must have been password protected.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, Freddy Ruger. It's almost as good as this guy I follow on Twitter. It's like the best fake name ever.
What is it?
Have you ever read or watched The Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
You know the character Bilbo Baggins, you know, the Hobbit.
Yes.
Bilbo Baggins. Well, his name on Twitter is Dildo Gaggins. And it makes me LOL every time I see it pop up in my feed. I don't call me juvenile, but it cracks me up.
What does he talk about? What does he tweet about?
All kinds of stuff.
X about.
Yeah. He's a good follow.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
I think it's a lot of Oklahoma City stuff, conspiracy stuff, you know, all the good stuff.
Oh, I watched, speaking of, I did watch The American Nightmare this week.
Did you?
I did. And I actually watched it the Saturday, which was tomorrow, a week from tomorrow. And I watched the first episode. My girlfriend was pissed that I was watching a Netflix show without her, so I had to rewatch episode 1. I was like, you don't like true crime because then you get like, you know, nightmares. But wow, that's
crazy, wasn't it?
I think maybe we should let the audience one more week before we give spoilers on it. But wow, it's up to you. But
yeah, no, we'll just let it ride. Let the people watch it if they want. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But yeah, if you want a good show, 3 hours of your time, you will not be disappointed. American Nightmare on Netflix.
Yeah, I think even a little less. They might be like 40, 50 minutes. So you could blow
Something
through
like
it in
that.
3 hours. Yeah, and it's a great 3 hours to blow through.
Yeah. All right, Joe. So let's hop right into our fun fact. Hold on a second. Hold on. I got an idea. Let's see if this works. Fun Fact Friday. Did that come through like weird sounding?
Yes, like someone did a bunch of nitrous or helium.
Ready for Fun Fact Friday, people.
There you go. How about that?
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
Roger might
right.
have to do a little jingle, you know? A little jingle.
Roger doesn't jingle. Roger rocks.
Well, a rock jingle. I know.
We'll ask.
Yes.
Hi, Tiny Dancer. We see you in the house now. You're late.
Good evening.
It's okay. It's okay. We forgive. All right. So for our Fun Fact Friday, we're coming back to Sweet Home, Virginia, and an area that I'm from in Frederick County. And this is about the O'Connells, a fellow by the name of Irving Sr. and his son, Irving Jr. Now, these two fellows both had a rich love of history. Irving Sr. would buy and save countless homes in Winchester and Frederick County in a time when tearing them down seemed more economical. He believed progress didn't have to mean destroy. He loved the theater and would perform at the old Bark Mill Theater, which was housed in the old Sumac Mill at the corner of Wolf and Braddock Streets. His son, Irving Jr., was a child prodigy, maybe even a genius. He attended Harvard. He mastered a 3-year Latin course in 3 months. He became a Marine and went to war in Korea. And in 1965, he moved to Los Angeles and started a newspaper distribution company. He was the first business ever to distribute a brand new magazine that had just came out called Rolling Stone. That no one else would take a chance on. Irving Jr. returned to Winchester with his wife and new daughter, Joanna, in 1979. He helped run his father's business and helped maintain the various historic properties that they owned around Frederick County. One of those was Harmony Hall near Strasburg, Virginia. This is where Irving Jr. would live with his family until 2004. Irving Sr. died in 84, and Irving Jr. died in 2008. So these guys don't get enough credit around here for helping save a lot of the history around town. So that is your Fun Fact Friday. And I also wanted to throw this out there. It's a little quote from Hunter S. Thompson, folks. Words to live by. We are all alone. We are all born alone. We will all die alone. And in spite of true romance magazines, we shall all someday look back on our lives and see that in spite of our company, we were alone the whole way. I do not say lonely, at least not all the time, but essentially and finally, always alone. This is what makes your self-respect so important, and I don't see how you can respect yourself if you must look in the hearts and minds of others for your own happiness. Hunter S. Thompson from the book The Proud Highway, folks. I highly suggest you read. Brilliant minds of the 20th century. And these beat poets who were around back in the 60s at the time of the JFK assassination. So, that brings us
happiness in yourself.
That's right. So that brings us to the topic of tonight's show, which is adventures in babysitting, which refers to all of the people and entities who were watching Oswald all throughout his life. Now, we're going to take this kind of, what's it called?
30 time. Well, I was going to say like from an overview of looking at the.
Yeah, we're looking at this from 60 feet in the air, but
we're 15,000 feet. If you're looking at D.B. Cooper.
There you go. So we're going to look at this chronologically. That's the word I was looking for. So the earliest time that we could possibly put Oswald around someone who had ties to the CIA would be, of course.
Let's see if the chat could guess it. Who would be the first one, chat? If no one gets it.
Well, Freddie said he came here for the Elizabeth Shue movie. That was last week. There's no theater of the mind tonight.
We have a few pages we could read still. I guess
we have a lot of pages we could read still.
And Mr. Gasson, my southern accent went over real well with all the audience in the live chat.
Well, the answer is David Ferry.
Yes, it is.
We can establish that through his contact with Oswald in the Civil Air Patrol in the mid-50s, going back to 1955. And then young Oswald decides to join the Marine Corps. And where did they send him, Joe?
The Marine Corps?
Yeah.
To Japan.
Where in Japan specifically?
Atsugi.
Which is?
A base that was one of the homes of the U-2 and allegedly other shenanigans.
Yeah, and who controlled the flights of the U-2, Joe? Say the three letters.
That would be the C to the I to the A.
Hallelujah. Had to drag it out of him, folks, but we got there eventually. The CIA. Okay? Then, Joe, we have Oswald getting out of the Marine Corps, going home for 2 short days, and then hopping on a boat and heading for Russia. Okay? Now, once Oswald gets to Russia, one of the first places that he goes is the United States Embassy, where he allegedly tries to rescind his United States citizenship and defect to Russia. Well, there he is met by State Department cover people working in the embassy, Richard Snyder, and I can't remember the guy's first name, but it's Mick Vicker. And then while he is there, he is interviewed by, what was her name? Patricia McMillan Johnson?
Yeah.
Johnson McMillan. And she's a CIA mockingbird.
One of the most loyal mockingbirds. Yes.
Okay. So then, that's one of the last CIA, quote, contacts, at least that we know about, unless one of his Russian friends was a double agent over there, while Oswald is in Russia. Now, we explored that on the ship back from Russia, the CIA had activated this guy, this fella, right here.
A handsome fella.
James Herbert Martin and his family were in Europe. They are on the manifest of the SS Maasdam coming back to the United States with the Oswalds. The picture on the right is James Herbert Martin. The picture on the left is a fellow that looks a hell of a lot like James Herbert Martin 2 years prior to the picture on the right, chilling out on the sun deck of the SS Maasdam on the exact same ship and cruise as the Oswalds were coming back from Russia. Now, we'll come back to this fellow here in a little bit.
We promise.
We promise. Now, when the Oswalds return to Dallas, the Dallas area, Joe, they actually meet a couple of people that we're going to hear from right now.
All right.
We met Oswald about in the summer of 1962, when we heard that there was a young couple who arrived from Russia and were in very difficult financial condition. So a friend of mine and myself drove to Fort Worth and found this tenement house where he was living near Montgomery Ward.
And were giving either crib or playpen or clothes for Marina. For instance, people were so wonderful that I believe she had close to 100 dresses in her wardrobe. And they were nice things. They weren't old, worn-out things, but they were just nice things that people had too many and they shared. In fact, that was one of the biggest objections of Oswald, because it made it very difficult for him. He could never provide Marina with 100 dresses. But it's rather difficult to discuss people's married life, because what you see outside is not always goes on when you don't see the people. But from what we knew, they weren't very happy. But for some particular reason, they both didn't want to leave each other. And we found out that Oswald was beating Marina. Well, Marina spoke to me a few times about their actual married life, and she was, in a way, complaining that he was not aggressive enough, and he was not interested enough in sex, and quite often he would prefer reading or prefer just to do more work than attend to this. On the other hand, with her, it was quite important, and she definitely felt lack of it. So that could be also one of their problems. She teased him about sex, and she teased him about other little different things, about how he works, that he doesn't attend to this and he doesn't attend to that. And all these things should never be done in front of people, because it's the worst thing you can do to your husband, to say something publicly, even with the friends or with people you're supposed to know, but especially sex. I don't think that should never be mentioned. And that could be a very big point with him. He was humiliated by it, definitely.
I had the impression that he was in love with Marina, and that on his side there was no unhappiness.
What happened?
What's the thing I remember now? That he did not want Marina to learn English, maybe because he was an intensely jealous person. He did not want Marina to communicate with other people.
make
Well,
love to her or whatever.
one of the things struck me quite odd. Finally, we were talking to him. He was forbidding Marina to smoke outright. I was trying to explain to him that this is modern times. Women do smoke, providing they smoke moderately. There's no harm in it at all. The worst thing he can do is forbid her smoking. And I believe I convinced him to permit Marina to smoke, which she was very happy, and she said once that, yes, she smokes, and it's all right. Then all of a sudden, we dropped by one evening to visit them, and then she went in the kitchen, and she came back quite upset. I said, what happened? She said, he just took cigarette out of my mouth and put it out on my shoulder.
What happened actually, that I was standing there on the balcony, and my wife and Marina were looking at the rifle which was inside of a closet, And Marina said to my wife, look at that idiot, he has a rifle here. Instead of buying food or necessities for our home, he bought a rifle. And that's what I just overheard, but I actually did not even look in the closet, And it seemed to me like such a ridiculous idea for Oswald to buy a rifle when he needed money so desperately, it was just a big joke,
So we all start laughing how crazy it is, and then at a clear sky, George had a peculiar sense of humor sometimes. He said, did you take by any chance pot shot at Walker? And we all laughed at it like a greatest big joke, like nobody thought anything of it at all, because we never thought that anything like that could happen. And later on, from reading the papers, we heard that that's exactly what happened.
All right, folks, there you heard some comments from George and Jean de Mohrenschildt of interest in this little clip. You hear that the de Mohrenschildts actually met the Oswalds in the summer of '62. And this is right after they returned from the USSR. So they didn't just meet in, early '63. They had known each other from the summer previously. They just didn't meet at this Magnolia party with all these other white Russians. So that's very interesting. And, the way they talk about the controlling behavior of Oswald, he didn't want Marina to talk Russian, didn't want her to smoke, even though she ridiculed him about his sexual abilities and humiliated him, which never goes well. If you're a dude, and the woman you love is ridiculing your sex life, I mean, that's probably not a good idea for, a man's ego, I guess you could say. But, so, we know that the Mohrenschildts were visiting the Oswalds when they were living in Dallas in '62. And thus getting into early '63 and this famous Magnolia party with where they meet all these other white Russians. George Bowie is there. De Mohrenschildt's there. Is Ruth Payne there? Are the Paynes there?
Ruth Payne is allegedly at the Magnolia party, and that is allegedly where the handoff from the de Mohrenschildts to the Paynes occurred, allegedly, and yeah, there were a ton of white Russians there, and we'll get into some of the white Russian.
Well, I think the handoff happened after the Walker shooting, because there in the interview you hear George talking about this rifle, seeing it in the Oswald's apartment and everything, and then right around that time is when they left and went to Haiti in '63 and handed off to Ruth.
Yeah, both.
Because Oswald didn't get the rifle until late March '63, allegedly. Yes,
I think this interview was in sometime in 1964. I could be wrong, but yeah, the de Mohrenschildt and Lee Harvey Oswald both left town, respectively, to Haiti for George de Mohrenschildt, and to New Orleans for Lee Harvey Oswald very shortly after the Walker incident. And George Mohrenschildt kind of came back on that a little bit later in life, right, as he wrote his manuscript. And I don't know if there was some guilt there, because, I mean, George Mohrenschildt was a really influential force on Lee Harvey Oswald. He was allegedly put in contact with Lee, and we'll get into who put them in contact, but within the white Russian community, because the white Russian community was very conservative, very anti-communist, and
very wealthy.
Very wealthy. And yeah, George Mohrenschildt was a former, what was it? It was like provost of something. He was an elite in old Russia, and his family
Baron.
Baron. There you go. And he was once the Bolsheviks took over, his family was kicked out, and he was pretty much, very anti-communism the rest of his life. But he kind of went back and forth in terms of sympathies, right? Because he did apply to be intelligence and was denied because of alleged German sympathies. Before
they thought he was a Nazi,
basically. I tried to say this thing. And I mean, there's so many things. I mean, him knowing the Jackie Kennedy's family.
But again, that's officially. Nobody knows unofficially how connected he was to the CIA, as far as being a contact or contract agent. You don't necessarily need to be an official CIA employee, to have ties to the CIA and to work for them, or do work for them, or report to them about certain things.
And they like to have one degree of separation sometimes, and at least in George Mohrenschildt's case, and maybe in Ruth Payne's case.
Cutouts. But people you can trust.
Yes.
But if things go sideways, you also can say, hey, he's not affiliated with us. We thought that guy was a Nazi. We didn't have nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
But the truth can sometimes be much stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about George de Mohrenschildt, he actually admitted to Edward J. Epstein that a man by the name of James Walton Moore, who was the head of the CIA office in Dallas, approached him to report back on Oswald. Get close to this guy and report back. Because obviously the CIA was interested in the Oswalds. You got a United States Marine defecting to Russia at the height of the Cold War, threatening to expose secrets of your top secret spy planes, and you just totally ignore them like they're not there. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And even though there might not be any official documents and records left from that era, we all know that sometimes documents get destroyed, okay, or lost, or misplaced, or misfiled, or burned, or whatever you want to call it. But let me tell you a little something about Jay Walton Moore. In 1977, December that is, he officially retired, allegedly, officially, from the CIA.
Because you could trust those time dates, right?
Well, they say once you're CIA, you're always CIA until you die. But they decided to bless him with the Career Intelligence Medal. Now, folks, this thing is no joke. Let me read you his commendation. Mr. James Walton Moore is hereby nominated for a Career Intelligence Medal in recognition of his substantial contributions to the missions of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's the FBI, the Office of Strategic Services, that's the CIA precursor, the OSS, the Strategic Services Unit, and the Central Intelligence Agency for more than 37 years. Jay Walton Moore spent most of his boyhood in Shantung Province, China, with his missionary parents. Following graduation from Hardin-Simmons University in 1940, Jim joined the FBI and served as a special agent in both Chicago and San Francisco. During the latter assignment, he reported to pro-communist elements in Chinatown. He reported on, pro-communist elements in Chinatown and directed a U.S. government panel to interview aliens and U.S. citizens returning home to ensure that enemy agents were not slipping into the U.S. as refugees or foreign businessmen. So, Joe, that sure as hell sounds a lot like what one could possibly suspect Lee Harvey Oswald of doing, right? You want to check on these guys to make sure they're not coming back as enemy agents.
For sure.
Makes
sense. How do you do that? You befriend them, you befriend their family, and
you watch them, you spy on them, you
talk to them.
Yeah.
And you have dinners, and in some cases, in George Mohrenschildt and Jean's, helping the Oswald family, right? Paying for groceries and other things that they have alleged to have done in their relationship with Oswald. And Jay Walton Moore is
the catalyst.
Yeah, he literally through, I believe it's Max Clark, one of the White Russians who was a lawyer that helped de Mohrenschildt get in touch with the Oswald family. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, and it wasn't just George getting close to Lee Harvey Oswald. It was Jean getting close to Marina as well. So obviously they wanted to watch both of them.
Yeah.
Because, any woman that married a, U.S. national and comes back here with him is going to be suspected of being a KGB agent or spy. So, of course, they wanted to watch her as well.
And Rob, that also kind of brings a parallel to Ruth and Michael Payne, right? Because you got a situation where Michael Payne was separated from Ruth, even though they were in the same nursing home, like 50-something years later in California. We're well aware.
I can't shake this bitch. She follows me everywhere.
Yeah, and I only watched that documentary once.
He was bitter too. He was bad, man.
Yeah, it feels like he was kind of like losing it at that point. He was like, I don't care, I'm going to talk. And it's like Ruth was like, she was still in charge of a faculties.
Yeah.
So
Michael's
that was
pissing in. It depends.
Oh, Rob, before you go, I saw a comment I wanted to talk about.
Well, feel free to highlight it, bud.
Sure. Before we move on, do we know Ferry was CIA or was he DIA?
He wasn't officially either one. But that does not mean that he could not have been a contract agent off the books, paid cash. There's plenty of allegations. We just talked about the other show about the Robert Morris stories where he was making flights into Cuba to pick up refugees, to bring up supplies, run guns, you name it, bombing runs, allegedly.
I think he was even alleged, or one of the guys that was, I don't know, it was Brashears or one of the other people we were talking about with these allegations at Garrison, that said he was actually forced into doing these type of activities because of blackmail. I think one of those, I think it was Brashears.
No, I think David Ferry was a highly intelligent man who had a very unique set of skills that the CIA took advantage of. I mean, when you have a guy who, a Barry Seals-esque kind of guy who, he might have been a homosexual, but he wasn't like a flaming, Momo.
No.
You know what I mean? He was
not like the JFK movie. Yeah.
No, he was
when he played that clip of him, when the real David Ferry audio that some people stole later, I won't mention names, or played later and said, "Oh, this is new David Ferry like audio," and you guys had done it like 5 years ago. But regardless, I mean, he is a very rational, very smart thinker when you listen to that, and I look at him like he could have probably landed those planes on the shortest runways, like better than some maybe CIA or other military pilots. And I think there's allegations that he returned, what was it, Marcelo from the South American jungle.
Yeah.
And of course, you don't know, but I mean, he's
the perfect kind of guy that is a perfect cutout to do the CIA's bidding, but not be affiliated, or they could not come back to the CIA in any form or fashion. Like, it's plausible deniability for this guy.
Yep.
Hey, we'll pay you to do this. You do it, you get caught, you're screwed, you're on your own, type of thing. So that's what we'd be thinking on that.
Yep. And Tiny Dancer said Priscilla McMillan Johnson wrote that novel with Marina. Of course, that is me and Lee. And there's some interesting details surrounding that. And, when we get to Marina later in this episode and talk about not only how Oswald was steered towards intelligence, but also how Marina was. And she in 1964 and early 1965 was writing this book with Marina, and had some really shady things in terms of course, she interviewed Lee back in Russia in 1959. And we'll get into some of her shenanigans later. But in terms of Porter, which was Marina's last husband, she was also involved with that as well. So,
all right, are you quite done?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Back to Jay Walton Moore. Jim joined the OSS in November of 1944 and was commissioned as an ensign USNR. His first assignment was in the Kunming, I'm guessing that's a province in China. Never mind. Where he recruited and trained Chinese agents to infiltrate Japanese lines. While in Kunming, he took a parachute training and on August 17th, 45, jumped into the Japanese internment camp at Wahisen. Following the evacuation of refugees, he became the chief of mission in Qingdao. Like the beer.
Nice pronunciation, sir.
Thank you. I used to deliver that kind of beer. Qingdao. Returning to the U.S. in December 1946, he was reassigned as vice consul, redacted, in Daren, China. Soviet intransigence.
You sound like me.
Soviet intransigence. I've just never heard of that word.
I knew.
Prevented him from reaching Daren, so he remained in Qingdao for an additional year until it transferred as redacted in Calcutta, India, arriving there in April of 48. Jim then returned to the United States in October of 1949 and joined the contract division of the Office of Operations of the CIA. CD/00 policy favored continuity, and Jim was no exception. From 49 to 54, he served in the Houston field office, and from 54 to 72 as the resident officer in Dallas. The contact division evolved into the Domestic Contact Service, and a reallocation of resources raised the Dallas resident office to field office status. Jim was the obvious choice for the job, and after 9 months of training and prep in Washington, where he performed admirably, by the way, he was assigned as chief of the new office with responsibility also for resident offices in Tulsa, Houston, Austin, and oh, by the way, Joe, New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Jim's work in Dallas has been consistently excellent. under his leadership in Dallas Complex, has provided timely foreign intelligence in response to worldwide priorities and requirements. As an example, in April of 1975, the acting director of strategic research commended Jim for, quote, outstanding performance for urgent special efforts to obtain information, which resulted in a reduction of over 500,000 in the intelligence community's estimate of the total number of Soviet military personnel. Similarly, the Dallas office has provided excellent support to the clandestine service. And let me just add in there, okay, that Jay Walton Moore is obviously part of the Soviet Russia division as well. Okay, if he's keeping tabs on the Soviet military personnel. Similarly to the Dallas office has provided excellent support to the clandestine service. In November of 76, the chief FR division commended Jim and his staff for, quote, outstanding support from October of 75 to 76 in efforts which were indispensable to the establishment of FRA assets in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, and in identifying and assessing prospective targets for recruitment. So, this guy is on the lookout, folks.
Yes, he is.
There are very few persons of potential consequence to the intelligence community in Texas who Jim Moore does not know, and little that he cannot accomplish there on behalf of community and agency requesters. The assassination of President Kennedy in Dallas in November of 63, the subsequent allegations against the CIA, and Jim Moore's long association with agency interests and programs in Texas have made him a repeated target for media attention and scurrilous innuendo. Although under various forms of severe external pressure, as a result, Jim Moore never lost his calm, cool demeanor, and has been absolutely dependable in adversity. An experienced professional, a true gentleman, a delightful person, and an example to be emulated, Jim Moore has been a real credit to the intelligence profession. As he approaches retirement, he richly deserves recognition in the form of the agency's Career Intelligence Medal. Wow.
Wow.
So, there you go, folks.
And Rob, I have a little bit on Jay Walton Moore here. If you would, what are you laughing at?
Huh?
What are you laughing at?
That.
What, me?
No.
Oh, yeah, I put that up briefly while you were talking. I didn't want to distract you. I know it would have made you laugh. That is a great comment there. And this is from, I'm just going to read a paragraph and a half from Bill Simpich's The 12 Who Made the Oswald Legend. And built. There we go. I didn't have the title on my document here. De Mohrenschildt visited and exchanged, which, by the way, this, if you haven't read this essay, it can be found on Mary Farrell for free, and it is a very good source of de Mohrenschildt and later Ruth Payne and the handoff. But de Mohrenschildt visited and exchanged cards and letters with CIA official Jay Walton Moore on a regular basis during the 50s and 60s. Moore wrote a memo in 1977 claiming he only got to meet de Mohrenschildt twice, in 58 and 61. Moore's hazy memory on a number of visits was exposed by the HSCA in 1964. A similar memo by Moore admitted he had met de Mohrenschildt in 57, several times, and in 58 and 9, and the last time in 61. There was more than that. De Mohrenschildt sent Moore a stack of reports in 57, 58. In 1958, Moore used de Mohrenschildt as a contact with a Polish official. In 1960, Moore referred to de Mohrenschildt as a cleared contact, in quotations, for a copy of a memo of the USSR's use of petroleum. And of course, George de Mohrenschildt was a geologist. Moore visited the Mohrenschildts. This is will be familiar to a lot of people that study this thing of ours. Home in late 1961 to see a movie of their walking tour from Mexico to Panama. Although the Mohrenschildts said they were tracking the mining trails of the old Spanish conquistadors, they found themselves with hundreds of Cuban exiles in Guatemala City, a staging area for the Bay of Pigs invasion that was about to begin. Convenient. De Mohrenschildt revealed a few hours before his death that Moore took him to lunch in late 61 and described to him an ex-Marine in Minsk in whom the CIA had, quote, interest. In the summer of 62, an associate of Moore suggested that de Mohrenschildt might want to meet Oswald. De Mohrenschildt then called Moore, suggesting that suitable payback would be a little help by the State Department with the oil exploration deal in Haiti. As obviously, we know he went to Haiti. And that is just some of what Mr. Bill Simpich wrote in regards to de Mohrenschildt and Jay Walton Moore.
Yes. And to follow up there a little bit, I got a memorandum here, Joe, for the director of the Central Intelligence in 1976, who happens to be a man by the name of George Bush. Maybe you heard of him. And this is from the Inspector General John Waller of the CIA. And the subject is one Mr. George de Mohrenschildt. Action required. None. This memorandum is for your information, sir. We also have attached at something a suggested draft reply to Mr. de Mohrenschildt's letter to you. So basically, the CIA Inspector General is telling the director, George Bush, how to answer the letter from de Mohrenschildt. Action taken. 2. We have reviewed DDO and IG files on Mr. de Mohrenschildt. In addition, at our request, the CIA staff has run agency traces on him and has been in touch with the FBI as well. Findings. There is voluminous, if that's a word, material on Mr. That means a lot, by the way. There is a lot of material on Mr. de Mohrenschildt in CIA's files, most of it dating from post-Kennedy assassination period bullshit. When he testified before the Warren Commission on his acquaintance with Mr. and Mrs. Lee Harvey Oswald. A copy of de Mohrenschildt's testimony is attached for your perusal, sir. The bulk of the material in our files consists of FBI reports, the most recent of which is dated 67. The FBI has informed CIA it has no traces on de Mohrenschildt beyond that date, and our files contain all of its previous material on him. Mr. Helms' June 3rd, 1964 memorandum for the Warren Commission on the de Mohrenschildts is attached at C. It describes the agency's interest in obtaining reports from Mr. de Mohrenschildt in 1957 as a result of his sojourn in Yugoslavia of that year. Contact Division, now the Domestic Collection Division, the DCD, had its resident agent in Dallas, Mr. Jay Walton Moore, contact de Mohrenschildt at that time. The history of Mr. Moore's relationship with de Mohrenschildt from 57 to 61 is also attached. As a routine matter, Mr. Moore requested traces on de Mohrenschildt. The trace results attached contain sufficient derogatory information to preclude further extensive contact with the de Mohrenschildts. An OS summary on Mr. de Mohrenschildt prepared in response to the current request is also attached for your perusal, sir. Our files show that a mail cover was placed on letters addressed to Mr. de Mohrenschildt, care of the U.S. Embassy in Haiti, from about 64 to 66. So they're monitoring the de Mohrenschildt's mail for 2 years after the assassination. This, and in quote, parentheses, this was probably not uncovered at the time of the external investigations, in parentheses. This included opening and photographing the contents of some letters by the CIA stationed there. The results of this operation were shared with the FBI. Number 7, Mr. de Mohrenschildt came to the attention of this office during the Rockefeller Commission investigations. We were asked to respond to a memorandum submitted to the commission by Mr. Paul Hock entitled CIA Activities and the Warren Commission Investigation. Mr. Hock called for an identification of Mr. Jay Walton Moore's employment affiliation and asked what Mr. Moore knew about Oswald and what he may have told Mr. de Mohrenschildt about him. Our reply to the Rockefeller Commission is attached for your perusal, sir. The most recent information we have on Mr. de Mohrenschildt comes from Mr. Jay Walton Moore, who was contacted in May and July of 76 by writers connected with the Reader's Digest and with the Dial Press and the Dell Publishing Company. Both writers questioned Mr. Moore about Oswald and Mr. de Mohrenschildt. Mr. Moore's reports on these contacts are attached for your perusal, sir. Conclusions. Mr. de Mohrenschildt appears to have led an adventurous and colorful life as a petroleum engineer and a businessman.
That is true. He did lead an extremely colorful life. That is without doubt, I think we can say. He is alleged to have, how should we say it, Rob? To have gone both ways. And what was the Dutch guy he befriended, William Altmans, later in life, that did a lot of, and actually played, going back to our last episode, George de Mohrenschildt in the JFK movie, I believe.
Yes.
And he was alleged to, play in the dirt. I don't know how you say it. Sorry, that's a Family Guy thing, I think.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Probably for the better.
Okay. In conclusion, they say he is poor. Hold on. He is both well and poorly connected, and some of his associations in the past have raised serious questions. Certainly, his relationship with the Oswalds has caused him considerable trouble and may have caused this agency and the FBI to spend more time and energy on him in the past than was necessary, Joe. Both the FBI and this agency, however, had dropped their interest in Mr. de Mohrenschildt's activities by the mid to late 60s. Because, hey, Oswald and Kennedy are dead.
He might not have agreed with that, though, sir, because he, I think in that letter to Bush, alleged he was being followed and tailed. And
that's not until 76, though. But yeah.
Of course, yes.
Both the FBI and this agency, however, had dropped their interest. Okay. We speculate that any attention he is now receiving would either be from local authorities in Dallas or from media representatives on the trail of a warmed-over story concerning the assassination of President Kennedy. We offer no proof of this conjecture beyond Mr. Moore's reports attached for your perusal, sir. What we can say is that we have found no indication that either CIA or the FBI has taken any active interest in Mr. de Mohrenschildt in recent years. And this is from 1976. So that's a roundabout way of saying maybe at one time, we kind of liked him for this or liked him for that, Yeah. Who's to say?
Yeah, and he was very, he obviously was moved to Haiti in May of 1963 and took up the task of getting Joseph Clement Charles to overthrow Duvalier in Haiti. And famously, when he came back to testify to the Warren Commission, he was greeted at the airport by debriefer extraordinaire Dorothy Matlock. And
debriefer.
If you get off the airplane and get into your cab and you see her, I wouldn't be thrilled.
Yeah, Tiny Dancer, I would not be surprised. Allegedly.
The first directorate of KGB.
So I found a memo from the Office of Security concerning George de Mohrenschildt and the CIA. And it's saying that de Mohrenschildt was security disapproved for OSS employment in 1942 because he was suspected of being a Nazi agent. On 13 August 58, derogatory information was furnished to the contact office, who was interested in interrogating him as an alien contact. His second wife, Phyllis, whom he married on July 48 and divorced in December 49, was employed as a receptionist by a covert project called NCFE from 1950 to January 1951, when her employment was terminated, reason not given. Subject's brother, Dmitri von Mohrenschildt, was approved on April 11, 1950 for exploitation as a contact for foreign intelligence purposes on a limited basis, not to receive classified information above confidential. So, you had his ex-wife and his brother both approved by the CIA for contract employment. Okay.
Yep, and his brother was big in it was Radio Europe and Radio Liberty, I believe. One of the projects of Cord Meyer, Rob.
That's definitely believable. Definitely believable. Let's see. A New York Times item from December 12, 1966 mentioned that George de Mohrenschildt had been acquainted with Jacqueline Kennedy's father, John Bouvier, and her mother, Mrs. Hugh Auchincloss, since Mrs. Kennedy was a girl. The de Mohrenschildts were quoted as saying they were perhaps the only persons in the world to have known the families of both President Kennedy and the Oswalds. Yep, he was Uncle George to Jackie Kennedy. Uncle George. Uncle George.
Yep. That is, who is it that said that no one knows the Oswalds and the Kennedys better than de Mohrenschildt? And that's kind of like a trick statement. A trick, yeah, because knew both families the best. You could obviously make that argument. But
yeah, and I'm deep diving in the CIA files, and you come across something that says this.
Please destroy.
Please destroy. Okay? These are de Mohrenschildt files, folks. Please destroy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So believe me, everything, we just don't have everything. We don't have and never will have the entire picture about any of this stuff. Because things have been destroyed, misplaced, misfiled, yada, yada, yada. And so, Joe, did you have anything else about Jay Walton Moore or de Mohrenschildt before we move on?
I think we're good there.
Yeah, dude, we could do a whole show just about de Mohrenschildt.
We can, for sure.
There is a lot of meat on that bone. But we'll move on briefly. Joe, go ahead and address the next handoff to the Paynes.
Yes. So it is, I guess, common knowledge or belief within the...
I think I found the only slightly hot picture of Ruth Payne.
Oh, you got to show it as I talk here, sir.
Yes, there you go. Slightly hot.
Wait, hold on.
Please continue.
Oh, okay. Well, that's like 1963 hot, you know? Like in 1963, that's hittable, I feel. You wouldn't stop. In 63, say you were a wee bit Rob. Back in this, like an 18-year-old Rob in the 60s.
I said she's fairly attractive in this photo. I found the only photo of her where she's slightly attractive from a sideways angle. I mean, it's all about the lighting.
That's her good side, Joe. That's really good lighting there, I have to say.
That is. It's a damn good lighting.
And she has the what's the lady from Star Wars that played the
Princess Leia bun.
Yeah, exactly.
She's got the Leia buns.
Before it was cool.
Yum yums.
But okay, I'm gonna read a little. So obviously, Ruth Payne was alleged to have met the Oswalds, at the party of Everett Glover on February 22nd, 1963. This is also commonly known as the, quote, Magnolia Party. Everett Glover was probably Glover, was a
Donald
chemist.
Glover's brother.
Yes, never know. Was a chemist with Magnolia Labs, a geology lab. Which
he was a black Russian.
Yeah. If you spend enough time in the geology labs and working for oil companies, you might turn a little dark. But and of course, Mr. George de Mohrenschildt was our favorite geologist. And Rob, before I move on, do you remember when we were talking with Larry Hancock and I said, wasn't George de Mohrenschildt an intelligence SLUT? And he kind of pushed back on that. And it was like, well, he was like really, and, I got this from, reading the Our Man in Haiti book by Joe Mellon, which is a really good,
I don't think he was disloyal to the United States. I think once he was here, he became loyal to the United States, especially if the government showed interest in him and paid him for good information. Because, look, back then, people in his position as oil geologist, I mean, he wasn't just looking at rocks, folks, okay? He's surveying for oil, finding oil.
Survey Haiti, I believe that was his official.
And where there's big money, or where there's big oil, there's big money to be had. And surely what he knew and what he found out in his travels and for his job and this and that, he's going to be talking and mingling amongst very important, wealthy people, very influential people of various countries.
Specialists in exploration.
Yeah, and, also trying to prospect for oil, That's just the way it was back then. Oil was kind of like a new thing back then, striking it rich and all that good stuff. So,
yeah. And he definitely was contracted to, quote, survey. I don't know if it was how much oil was in Haiti. I think that was his cover, although it seemed like the official reason was to help in a coup against Duvalier and rising up Joseph Clement Charles, who was the banker, one of the finance guys for Duvalier. And again, I got this from Our Man in Haiti. And I think I said during the conversation with Larry that like he never had got an oil deal in his life. And that's how it was portrayed in the book. But he really didn't have any significant deals, and he was always kind of on the take. And his place in Haiti, which was kind of like up in the mountains / like elite gated area in Haiti back in the day, he was kind of holding court and having all these intelligent people or people that had intelligence people or people that had connections to intelligence over for dinner, him and Jean. And it was like I don't know. It's a really weird situation what was going on with George de Mohrenschildt. He obviously had one of the longer
wife swapping.
Yes, that is alleged too. And someone, I think it was Tiny Dancer, asked, do you think he got with Marina, Rob?
Like one of Diddy's white parties, everybody's banging everybody,
They just banging everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, Marina was a straight up sleut back then. I wouldn't put nothing past any of it. But then again, I don't think Oswald would have been down for something like that.
No.
I think he might have gotten pissy and stormed off.
Too jealous, right? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, but again, if you kind of believe some of the stories about, what he was doing down there with, what was that chick at the Cuban embassy?
Oh,
Sylvia Duran.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So let me keep reading because I went on a huge tangent there.
Yes.
And the geology thing. So we're going back to the Magnolia Party in February of 1963. Glover and 4 other Magnolia employees approached Oswald and got him to talk for several hours about life in the Soviet Union. One of the employees, Norman Fredrickson, was a son of the former director of Radio Free Europe. And that, of course, de Mohrenschildt's brother, Dmitri, was involved in. As discussed in the prior chapter, the Paynes were the Paynes simply manipulated in position? Ruth had other intelligence operatives in her family, and the overall, I would say, message of this episode is how Oswald was surrounded by intelligence his whole life. And when we talked about how Ruth Payne was kind of 1 degree of separation away, her sister, Sylvia Hoke, was, of course, employed by the CIA, and also her brother-in-law, John Hoke. And you have also Michael Payne's family, who had connections to intelligence. His parents, Ruth Forbes and Lehman Payne, had a close friend named Mary Bancroft, Rob. And Bancroft was an OSS spy that had a long-term relationship with our favorite suspect, Alan Dulles, Rob. And she was the granddaughter of Clarence Barron, the owner of the Dow Jones Company, the manager of the Wall Street Journal, and of course the Dow Jones Index, and founder of Barron's Magazine. Later on, Ruth Forbes's third husband, which would be Michael Payne's stepfather, was the inventor of Bell Helicopter, and his research has been extremely complicated and esoteric with the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton, and as well as Bell Laboratories. And getting back to Bancroft, a veteran spy, and this is Ruth Payne's mom's, Ruth Forbes' close friend, was allegedly the mysterious author of the 12-63 memo, Rob, which detailed the inner workings of the Paynes family. And this was given to Alan Dulles, who gave it to Angleton, who then gave it to the FBI liaison, Sam Papich. And although the writer's name was never disclosed, it is alleged that it was written by Mary Bancroft. And that's a really interesting document as well. Talks about the history of the Paynes family and her sister and her father. And it's almost certainly Bancroft that wrote this letter, and of course gave it to Alan Dulles. And although the Paynes appear to be government assets rather than agents, I suspect they knew about the government's need to keep an eye on Oswald. They probably thought they were helping out the CIA, the State Department, or Bob Odom of the local FBI office. So, there's a lot on Ruth Payne. We don't need to deep dive her an hour and 15 minutes into this podcast. There's a ton out there, but she was very integral and, like we said, 1 degree of separation away from her sister and other official CIA ties, much like almost David Ferrie and George de Mohrenschildt. There's a trend here, and it will continue.
Yes. Because next up, we are going to circle back around, folks, to someone we touched on, because after, of course, the assassination, Ruth Payne gets cut out of the picture because Marina doesn't trust her anymore for some reason. Wonder why. But anyway, that brings us back to the folks that were on the boat coming back from Russia with the Oswalds. Fast forward a year and a half. And where does Marina find herself after the company of Ruth Payne? And that would be back with the Martin family. James Herbert and Wanda.
He's a very handsome fella.
Yeah, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because, hey, we did a hell of a lot of shows on a hell of a lot of Martins. Okay, they're all in the archives, but Joe did come across a new document that is very, very, very interesting. And we are going to examine a couple excerpts from that said document right now. Because it's pertinent. Because we've been painting you all this picture since Oswald was a teenager. Somebody affiliated with the CIA seemed to have eyes on this guy all the time throughout his life, leading up to the assassination and his death, and then on to Marina after that for months, years. So, Joe, please, let's drop a little knowledge about a new document that we found about the Martins.
Oh, yes, sir. So I first want to thank Southwest for this.
That is the understatement of the year.
That's exactly. I had to show it before.
Hey, they keep popping up. I mean, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? And you know what, Rob? Would you be shocked if I told you that during the preparation for the show, I found another Martin?
Yes, but it's not a J Martin.
We'll get there, I promise. I feel like maybe the J was kind of out of style by then, maybe.
Amen, sister.
This is a statement of James Herbert Martin in 1967, about mid-1967. I just found this document this week, and we had never seen this document before, Rob. Because
we did not come across it in our Martin investigation.
No, but
it slipped through our cracks.
But you know what? I want to give a shout out to Carmine, because his message to you and then he forwarded it to me led me to this.
Yes, it spurned it.
Yes. And that is what good document researchers do. They use some information and spurn other things. A confidential source who has not been contacted sufficiently to determine the reliability of information furnished. I feel like that's kind of like a preface to be like, well, we're not sure if this is true. But yet I digress. On June 20th, 1967. So this is about 3 years and 3 or 4 months after Marina moved out of James Herbert Martin and Wanda's house in February 1964, advised a special agent of the Tampa division of the FBI as follows. And Rob, we know that this is very plausible because James Herbert Martin did move to St. Petersburg, Florida in the mid to late 1960s.
Yep.
And, we have an interview with him, I think there in like the 80s or 90s, but it wasn't this juicy. So we'll get there. Approximately 1.5 years ago, James Herbert Martin had been in St. Petersburg, Florida, attempting to obtain employment in the hotel restaurant management field. Damn, he ran out of money so quick after taking all that money from the donations from Marina.
Yeah, at this him and his family are living in the station wagon.
Yeah, one has to wonder how you blow that much funds, because you're talking about, we'll get to the money that he says was taken in per week, but at this time, a white male, first name unknown. I think they're talking about the source here. Last name Linguist or phonetic. I think that means
first name Cunning.
Yeah, employed in the management business at the Sheridan Outrigger Motel, U.S. Highway 19 South, St. Petersburg, Florida, would not even consider employing Mr. Poor James Herbert Martin because he was the individual who was the business manager for Marina Oswald immediately following the assassination of President Kennedy. Check. That is true. Martin has been the manager of the Inn at Six Flags, Dallas, Texas at the time, and after the assassination had become a public relations representative for the Oswald family. More for Marina, and I guess in her two daughters as well, in theory. But Linguist refused to employ him or consider him, as the motel did not want to adverse publicity with which accompanied Martin. Martin was unable to obtain employment in the hotel restaurant management field and is believed to have obtained employment with Sears and department store in St. Petersburg, Florida. Okay, interesting. This is where it gets juicy, people. Service agents or FBI agents, I think I meant Secret Service agents, had contacted him and asked for a suite of rooms to be used on a confidential basis to accommodate Marina Oswald, her mother-in-law, and Lee Oswald's brother, that would be Robert, as well as representatives of the Secret Service. And Rob, we know this is semi-true because under our understanding, it was the Fort Worth sheriffs that reached out to the Secret Service, right? You with me, Rob? You must be muted.
Yes, sorry about that. I was just saying, but it was orchestrated by James Herbert Martin to the Fort Worth sheriff to reach out to the Secret Service to bring her there. Yes. So it was all orchestrated by Martin.
Yes. These arrangements were made. So, I mean, they're saying that it was the other way around here, which, you know, he's allegedly saying this, so he's kind of deflecting. That would kind of make sense. The arrangements were made, and for approximately 2 weeks, the government agents held question and answer periods with members of the Oswald family. We're going to do community fact check here because we are probably the world's foremost experts on James Herbert Martin. For what that is worth, that is also true.
This again, folks, is an FBI document.
Yes.
Okay. You see them already referring to themselves in this document at the very top. It says FBI agents. They also specifically say the Secret Service. Now, please continue, Joe, and see what they call the next group of folks.
Okay. Well, the group moved. The group moved from the motel after the government agents informed Martin that Marina's location had been determined by another government agency, and they would have to move her. Pause. Sorry, I was reading the teleprompter. Fact check. That is an interesting sentence to unpack here because we've talked about how there was a lot of interagency rivalry in terms of who would get custody of Marina in a sense. The Secret Service had been kind of camped up with the Oswald family at the Six Flags Inn until the 26th or 27th, or up until the 29th, but it was alleged on the 27th that the Phoebes, the FBI, and this is based on Robert Oswald's book for what it's worth, rolled up while him and Secret Service agent Capods was leaving for lunch, and he said the Phoebes have found us. But this is a sentence that
this is an FBI report specifically referring to another government agency, not themselves. Okay. Yeah.
And it's CC'd to who, Rob? Who was, I can answer it. The Secret Service was also, or Department of Justice, was also CC'd on this document. So you have an FBI document CC'd to the Secret Service, but they're talking about government agents and having to move Marina and her family, as her kids, Robert and Marguerite, obviously did not go with them to the Martin home.
And if you remember correctly, we alleged that James Herbert Martin and his wife Wanda were working for the CIA specifically.
And we know the latter is correct.
We also believe that in this document, this FBI document, they're not talking about themselves. They say FBI agents or Secret Service agents. So they are referring to the CIA when you see the words government agency and government agents. They are referring to the CIA, so keep that in mind.
I believe so, sir. I do. There's really no other option.
There's no other explanation.
The government agents had already conducted a background investigation on him and propositioned him to allow Marina, Oswald, and her 2 children, that would be June and Rachel, to live with him in his home.
But he orchestrated all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was our understanding.
Or somebody was telling him to orchestrate all this stuff.
Yeah,
that's basically the way this document is reading. But yeah, please continue.
Sure. He was additionally propositioned to being Marina Oswald's business manager, and he accepted on a basis he would perform these duties as long as she resided with him. Okay, we got to unpack that here. We were always under the assumption that he propositioned Marina and for him to be his business manager, and of course brought other people on, like her lawyer in the Warren Commission, Mr. John Martin Thorne, of course. But here in this document, and again, he is telling this to an FBI informant who is directly relating it to the special agent in charge in Florida, St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg, coincidentally, was actually an area where a lot of mafiosos were hanging. Interesting. But we'll get to that, I promise. Okay, and his family, and he operated as her business manager and preparing contracts with magazines, newspapers, and other periodicals, and arranged for interviews and press releases. Fact check, true. He indicated money came in initially at the rate of $50,000 per week from public donors. That's $500,000-ish today.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. She resided with him for a period of 3 months. It was closer to 2.5, but what are you going to do? And during the time she was at the house, government agents, Rob, posed as attorneys and developers who were associates of Martin, named Martin as well. And hold on, I want to stop sharing this for a second because I'm going to read the comments. And I think, has anyone been paying attention in class who can guess who that possible government agent as a lawyer would be? I just mentioned him. I think he's referring to John Martin Thorne. And, I've long suspected, because if you go back, and I think a lot of people here are familiar with our James Herbert Martin episode, it was, might I say, a really good one. He didn't, well, John Martin Thorne was, hold on, I just lost my train of thought. John Martin Thorne is allegedly to be one of these attorneys that was posing as a government agent, and as we'll get to in later.
No, they were saying a government agent posing as attorneys and contractors. Maybe people installing phone lines in their house, or doing construction. Yeah, I'm thinking about putting a new roof on the house, and yeah, come on in, Joe. And walking around the house.
Yeah, that's what I was interested in, like developers. I wonder what they mean by that. I mean,
contractors.
Okay.
Or yeah, developers, people they were probably having meetings with, with Marina about different things. They would have been government agents instead of legit lawyers or legit businessmen or legit developers or contractors. And it specifically says they were friends of Martin. Associates, meaning they work for the same people. Government agents, CIA, however you want to say it. But let's continue. Let's not get bogged down in John Morton Thornland.
She was presented as a She was presented as a considerate mother who cared for her children and was bereaved by the loss of her husband. She didn't mourn very long. She didn't mourn very long. After meetings with the press,
penis.
yes. By the loss of her husband, after meetings with the press, she would be alone with Martin's family. She would always chastise the stupid Americans. Fact check, that is true. We have heard that in a lot of other documents, and whether that's like James Herbert Martin's kind of company line or not, that is what him and John Morton Thorne actually said. Marina Oswald consumed large amounts of vodka and spoke very fluent English. That is very interesting, Rob. Very fluent English.
Which we will find out here in a second as soon as we finish up with this document.
Yes. She consistently claimed she had knowledge of the most important officials in the Soviet Union, and when living in Russia, she had complete access to all government facilities. She made statements she knew about the assassination before it occurred. See, I think that is where it starts getting into James Herbert Martin propaganda spin type of thing.
Big money land.
Yeah, if you remember in the Warren Commission, he brought up this whole Nixon thing, which was Oswald tried to assassinate Nixon when he came to Dallas, but she didn't. He didn't, because Marina locked Lee in a closet, and then one of the people in the Warren Commission asked, "Well, how do you lock a bathroom from the outside?" And she couldn't answer it, and it was kind of like pushed aside. So I feel like they're kind of grasping at straws here in a sense, and like in terms of the James Herbert Martin initial party line, but he's still sticking to that in a sense, right? She had made statements. I don't think she knew about the assassination before it occurred, because I'm not sure if Lee knew the assassination before it occurred, and if he did, would tell Marina that she was part of the Communist Party and would have prevented the assassination had she desired. Now, you have to remember, James Herbert Martin and Marina actually went to court over their contract. It was settled out of court. We don't know the exact amount, but yeah, Mrs. Martin maintained a diary. That is Mrs. Wanda, Rob.
Yeah.
And took down exhaustive notes concerning all statements and comments by Marina Oswald, and intended to write a book in the future. And this is kind of
and like I told Joe, I said, wouldn't it be nice to get your hands on Wanda Martin's diary?
Oh, God, that would be priceless. That's like up there with the JOEB internal report.
That's up there with Marilyn Monroe's diary. You know what I mean? Like,
and Dorothy Kilgallen's, for that matter.
Yeah, and
that's a joke.
Joe Meyer's diary.
It's a joke. Okay, Martin allegedly knew Jack Ruby, the man who killed Lee Oswald. Fact check by the Martin experts. True. He admitted that in his Warren Commission testimony, that in the hotel industry he did know Jack Ruby, and through motel and restaurant associations. And we had alleged that if Ruby needed a hotel for his guests of honor, he might have contacted Mr. Martin at the Six Flags for some, or maybe Thorne
private parties,
or Thorne to videotape it.
Now, to reiterate something that was said in the document, and something I believe wholeheartedly, that Marina Oswald knew way more and understood way more English than she let on. Okay? You have to remember, folks, when she testified to the Warren Commission, it was done through an interpreter. Whenever she was interviewed by the FBI or Secret Service, it was done through an interpreter. Yet, 2 months after the assassination, she was interviewed by a very close sitting man in Ruth Payne's, in the Martin home, because she was living there at the time. This interview occurred on January 27th, 1964. And I'm going to play not all of this, but a good bit of it so you can get a good understanding. It's only 5 minutes long, about Marina's English abilities. And it's very eye-opening if you have not seen this before. So check it out.
That's all right. I don't know.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Marina, what do you do all day? How do you spend your day?
I am busy with my children all day. I try to help to clean house and wash diapers, and little bit cook, play with children outside.
Are you under arrest of any kind?
No, I never done was arrest in the United States and in Russia too.
Are you free to do what you want to do?
Yes, I am free. If I can't, if I want to go to shopping or every place, I can to go.
How about your children, Marina? Are they good children? Do they behave?
Yes, my children very good for me, and I think this is very good children for everybody because Junior and Rachel is very quiet and listening.
How do you speak to the children, in Russian or in English?
I speak with Junior. Many times I speak with Junior in Russian language, but sometimes if I know English words, I speak English.
Junior is 2 years old?
Junior is 2 years old in February. And
Rachel is?
She understands English and Russian, but she don't speak language. No.
And Rachel is 3 months?
Rachel 3 months old.
Marina, do you believe that your husband killed President Kennedy?
I don't want to believe, but I have too much facts, and facts tell me that Lee shot Kennedy.
Did Lee ever tell you that he was going to do this?
He never done tell me this. And this was a very bad surprise for me.
Marina, did you love Lee Oswald?
Yes, I love Lee, and I sorry him.
You what?
I sorry.
You're sorry for him?
Yes. Because he died very young.
Do you visit his grave still?
I visit him in the grave every week. 1 time or 2 times a week.
Marina, what do you plan on doing?
All right, I think that's enough. That's 2 or 3 blowjobs for James Herbert Martin a week when they go visit the grave.
And maybe one for Robert.
The point of this video is to show you guys how good her English speaking and comprehension ability was. This is 2 months after the assassination.
Yeah.
You can't sit here and honestly tell me that she did not know English before she met Oswald. There's no way.
I agree.
No way. Because if she was doing like the honey trap stuff over there, or a swallow, or whatever she was doing, she would have learned English. Because you have to talk to Americans to get information. You have to understand English. A good way to have men speak freely around you is if they think that you can't understand what they're saying, but you really do.
Yeah.
And this is on national I mean, Joe, could you imagine going on national television in Russia at the height of the Cold War and being interviewed by somebody in Russian, and you have to understand what they're asking you, and then answer in Russian?
I can't. I can barely read English. But I mean, it's a lot. And we'll talk a little bit about some of Marina's later. She actually attended an English school, Rob, at the University of Michigan in early 1965 for 8 weeks, an intensive course. And this is in the FBI documents that I will show. And the special agent in charge, Dallas, and some people I think you're going to talk about next, which is the Fords, were telling the FBI that Marina is going to school in Michigan. And this is in December of 64. And then tells about some actors she might have hooked up with on New Year's that might have had some connections in Michigan. And then we'll get there, I promise. But it hands it off to the special agent in charge of Detroit, Rob. And then when she leaves, the special agent of Detroit says, upon receipt of her arrival back in Dallas, we're going to hand it back to the Dallas special agent in charge. So we've done episodes on Marina and her after assassination surveillance, right? Didn't we say there's 16? We had come across a document, 16 agents a day, 8 on 12-hour shifts each, I believe.
Yeah.
This was going on until mid-1965. I don't know if that amount, but you had people, we'll get into it, still advising on her almost, a year and a half after the assassination. So,
yeah, so she gets tired of James Martin and his advances, and they got caught screwing basically in Washington when she went there to testify for the Warren Commission and blew everything up. She ended up calling Wanda and making him get on the phone and tell his wife what happened and all this stuff. And
that must
she
have been
immediately upon returning from D.C., she decides it's time to get out of the Martin household. It's a toxic environment, whatever. So she is invited to the home of her good white Russian friends, the Fords, Declan and Catherine Ford. These are some prominent white Russians, okay? And let me give you a little bit about the resume and experience and education of one Declan Ford. So this goes back to 1942 when he enlisted in the U.S. Navy. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy. Part of this time was spent at UCLA, and most of the remainder in officer training schools, receiving an honorable discharge with the rank of aviation cadet. He speaks Spanish fluently, French fluently, enough to read geological reports in French, and Russian.
Geology role?
Huh?
Geology?
Geological reports. Yes, he's a geologist.
Okay.
From 45 to 46, he was employed at the Western Geophysical Company in LA, California. He was on the seismograph crew in Montana, Wyoming, and West Texas monitoring earthquakes. From 46 to 48, he was at the University of California at Los Angeles, where he received his bachelor's degree in geology. Subjects taken outside the geological department were inorganic chemistry, physics, college algebra, analytical geometry, differential and integral calculus, German, surveying, English, American history and government, geography, and physical education. So this guy was a freaking stud. Like, very smart fellow. From 48 to 50, he was with the Tidewater Oil Company in Bakersfield, surface and subsurface geological studies in the San Joaquin Valley of California. From 50 to 53, he was with the Continental Oil Company of Los Angeles, California, where he made surface and subsurface geological studies of various areas in California and did well site geology on wildcat wells. During part of this time, he was assisted by junior geologists who he trained in the techniques of the work. So he was diving even underwater looking for oil off the coast of California. From there, he was employed at DeGolyer McNaughton Incorporated in Madrid, Spain. Same thing. First 3 years were spent making regional and detailed surface geological studies for the purpose of locating drilling prospects in Spain. He moves from Spain to Turkey and does the same thing. Supervised geological field parties which map certain licenses held by a client in the Republic of Turkey. From 60 to 62, he was in Dallas. Prepared report on the geology and oil prospects of certain exploration licenses held by a client in the Republic of Turkey, and advised client on the advisability of further exploration and expenditures on the licenses in Dallas, Texas. He reviewed the geology of Australia and outlined an exploration program of certain permits held by a client. He made subsurface geological studies of oil and gas fields in northeast Mexico, the Texas Gulf Coast, Argentina, Bolivia, and Peru. These were used for making reserve estimates and evaluating the oil and gas prospect for clients interested in these areas. From May 62 to October 62, subsurface geological studies and reserve calculations of oil and gas fields of Louisiana. October 62 to the present, consulting geologist, Dallas, Texas, engaged in the development and evaluation of shallow drilling prospects in North Texas. So, interesting that before he was in Dallas, then he went to Louisiana, and then he went back to Dallas, kind of like somebody else we know. Ford is married to a Russian woman who came to this country shortly after World War II, having married an individual named Scotty, who was stationed in Russia in connection with the land lease program. She was always quite outspoken and indicated on several occasions that the communist system was quite good. She divorced Scotty and married Declan Ford, who applied for a job here on August 15, 1963. Catherine Ford has recently been seen in the company of Marina Oswald. Both Catherine and Declan Ford have been subjects of security investigations. And that's by the CIA, folks, by the way, in case you were wondering. And let's see here. So this is a February 1964 Dallas Police Intelligence document to Captain Ganaway of the Special Services Bureau. These are the same people that were watching the Martins that we got that same other document from.
Yep, the White House direct line was written by Ganaway.
Through Hostie's buddy Jack Revelle, the Criminal Intelligence Division, Special Services Bureau, Dallas Police Department. Subject, Criminal Intelligence George Bowie. Sir, pursuant to the instructions of Captain Ganaway, subject was interviewed with the following results. Subject is a native-born Russian. He came to the United States in 1924. He became a resident of Dallas, Texas in 1939. Subject is an accountant, and he works from his home. Subject stated that he first met Lee Harvey and Marina Oswald on August 25th, 1962. Okay, so now we're still early in 62. Remember I said that the Mohrenschildts met them in the summer of 62. This is August, when this guy George Bowie, at the home of Declan and Katia Ford, who was a petroleum engineer at the Continental Life Building in Fort Worth, Texas, brought the Oswalds to the Ford's home and introduced them to the Russian-speaking group in Dallas. Subject stated he saw Oswald approximately 8 times and that he did not know very much about this due to the fact that he was very withdrawn. Subject stated that George de Mohrenschildt, whose mailing address is blah, 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 brought the Oswalds to the last party they attended at the Fords on December 28, 1962. Subject also stated that Marina Oswald spent some time during November of 62. This is very interesting. At the homes of Declan and Katia Ford, Frank and Anna Ray, and Theophil and Anna Meller, due to some domestic problems she and Lee Harvey were having. Subject does not believe Oswald had any relationship with Jack Ruby. Respectfully submitted, F.A. Hellinghansen, detective of the Criminal Intelligence Section. So, apparently, Lee and Marina had separated in November of 62 at some point, and she went to live with the Fords for a short time, which is interesting and something that I did not know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And was that after one of the alleged physical altercations?
I don't know. That's all that's in the document.
Was that before Ruth? What did you say the date wasn't that?
November 62.
Oh yeah, that's way before. Yeah.
Got another intelligence report from 5 days after that last one, and this is concerning the subject of Thomas and Natalie Ray. Pursuant to the instructions of Captain Ganaway, subject investigation was conducted with the following results. Information was received by this office that subjects who reside at Blossom, Texas on Park Road were friends of Lee Harvey Oswald, and that Oswald stayed at their home for a few days prior to the assassination of President Kennedy. Subjects were interviewed by the undersigned officers, stated that they had met Oswald at a party on December 28, 1962 at the home of Declan Ford. Subjects stated that they were invited to the party by Mr. Ed Harris, who resides in Georgetown, Texas, and operates a cleaning establishment at this location. Subject stated there is a Frank and Anna Ray, who reside in Dallas, Texas, that were good friends of the Oswalds. Subject stated that the people who attended this party were either Russian-born or married to someone who was. The following is a list of some of the people who attended the party. Daniel Sullivan, geologist for Continental Oil, George Bowie, Anna and Theophil Miller, Tatiana Higgins, and Declan Ford. Subject stated that this was the only time that some of them met Oswald. Natalie Ray was Russian-born. Then we have another interview, and this was with Theophil Miller, another white Russian. Subject who was born in Poland, resides at La Vista Drive with his wife Anna, who is Russian-born. He is employed as a packer at Sanger Harris Department Store, and she is a draftsman at the Dallas Power and Light Company. Mrs. Miller stated that, she and George Bowie went to a small party at the residence of Peter Gregory in Fort Worth during the summer of 62. You know about the Gregorys, right?
I do, sir. I have a little
Now, this is summer of 62, when they just got back from Russia.
Yes, sir.
Where they met Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina Oswald. She and Bowie visited the Oswalds in Fort Worth 2 or 3 times after that to take them food and clothing. Oswald became very belligerent on these occasions, saying that he didn't need or want help from anyone. Mrs. Miller also stated that she saw the book Das Kapital, which was written by Karl Marx, during one of these visits at Oswald's house, and became very worried about it. Subject said he checked with the FBI, and they told him that Oswald was okay. He's all right.
He's all right.
He's all right. Yeah.
He works for Jagger style Joe.
Yeah, he's one of us. He's all right. Subject stated that a friend of his, Mrs. Cunningham, with the Texas Employment Commission, had helped Oswald get a job with a photo engraving company in Dallas in October of '62. When Subject told Oswald that he should thank her for getting him the job, he said, "Why should I thank anyone for getting me a job where I only make $1.25 an hour? Bitch." On or about November 5th, 1962, Marina telephoned Mrs. Meller and told her that Lee Harvey had beat her up and she had left him. So that's November 5th, 62.
Okay.
Cray.
Yes, and I have another interesting tidbit about Mr. Gregory, sir. And this,
please whip it out and drop it on us.
I'm going to whip it out. I'm going to whip it out like Petty Russo. This is also from Bill Simbich's The 12 That Built the Oswald Legend. And it's a little paragraph entitled, Oswald returned from the Soviet Union speaking Russian with a Polish accent. When Oswald and his family returned to Dallas-Fort Worth area from the Soviet Union, that would be also in 1962, sir, they knew they had to make contacts if they were going to put food on the table. Oswald sought out Peter Gregory shortly after his arrival. Peter Gregory described himself as an oil consultant, again, back to geology, who came from Russia in 1923. He was, of course, a white Russian as well. He was also a translator, and he translated one of the early FBI interviews of Marina. I believe it was like 27th or 28th. But his son, Paul, this is Peter Gregory's son, had taken Russian lessons from Oswald's wife, Marina. And Gregory, I think they're talking about Peter here, the father, provided Oswald with a letter certifying Oswald's ability to serve as a translator with a document attached. Gregory commented on Oswald's pronounced Polish accent, which was a result of his time with the Zeigers, which is another part of the legend makers. But so Peter Gregory's son took Russian lessons from Marina in '62. And he was later, whether it's, she wanted someone she was comfortable with to translate with the early interviews post JFK, or it's just a big coincidence. It's really interesting connection, and the White Russians go deep in this story here in terms of Marina and Lee before the assassination and after, and for years, as we'll see.
Yeah, and now we're up into the 70s, folks, and you know what happened then?
We're in mid 60s. I got one thing for you here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sorry. So, let's see. So, going back to the end of 1964, this is an airtel to the director FBI from Special Agent in Charge Dallas from Mr. Declan Ford, Rob. And he advised on 1/4/65, January 4th, 65, that subject had arrived at Ann Arbor, Michigan on 1/3. So he's advising the day after to begin her 8-week course in the English language, Rob. Her children remain at Richardson, Texas. So I didn't know this, really, that Marina in the end of 1964 to early 1965, or January, for 8 weeks, arrived at the University of Michigan for an advanced English language course.
So her kids stayed with the Fords.
I believe so. They weren't in Richardson, but I believe she did buy her house by then. She was balling in that money from all the donations from the stupid Americans.
Well, when did she marry Kenneth Porter?
So she married Kenneth Porter in June of 1964. So this is before that.
Okay, so she left her kids with him.
No.
No?
No. So she had only known Porter for 3 weeks before they married. And guess how she met Ford? The house.
You mean Porter?
Yes, Ford Porter. Ford Porter. So she had a 3-bedroom a house she bought in Richardson, Texas. And this is after she moved out with the Fords. I believe it was February, March 64 that we went into this in one of our previous episodes, Rob. And the Richardson, Texas thing stuck out to me. But allegedly, Porter was staying at a friend's house that was adjacent to the back patio of Marina's new house. But we'll get to that.
Oh, so he would see her on the back porch smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, drinking vodka. And
walk over and be like, hey, pretty lady.
Undressing in the window for all onlookers to see.
Now, real quick, Joe, before you continue, for folks that don't know, this is Creepy Ken Porter. Standing right behind Marina. He always seems to be like hawkeyeing her, just watching her every freaking move. It's creepy. Like what the hell is this guy doing?
Yeah, he's in a character that we might get into in depth more, but he was.
But they've been together for 60 years.
Yeah,
God bless them.
Yeah, that's true. Which is not not in the trend of Marina in a sense, right? Like,
yeah, well, I was not saying she hadn't had any other D in the past 60 years.
Oh no, she had a lot.
Porter has put up with it.
He's a swinger, that Porter. But he was an employee of Texas Instruments when they got married. But I had later heard that he was a carpenter. And I was like, what? Where did they get this carpenter thing from? And I'm not sure. Maybe he was a carpenter later in life. But all the documents show that he was working for Texas Instruments.
And there was a period there, I think it was in 1965, where he beat the hell out of Marina. And they had to go to court, and she got a protective order against him and all this stuff. And the judge basically said, you folks quit your nonsensing around and get back together and live your life. That was basically what the judge told him. And they did.
Yep. And so this is a document in early January. And of course, Declan Ford, who is the agent, in quotations. I love that term, the agent, like James Herbert Martin. An advisor of Marina Oswald advised on February 1st, 65, Marina's Oswald's present plans are to return to Richardson, Texas. He stated he does not have a great deal of information concerning Marina Oswald's present activities, other than she is attending her classes at University of Michigan. He does not know any acquaintances. Ford advised his wife and he, along with Marina, had attended a New Year's party, Rob, with various actors from the Dallas Theater Center. He advised Marina, and I mean, can this come from anyone but the Fords? Had become acquainted with various of these actors. Various, so not one actor, multiple. And is very possible one of these actors had a friend or relative in Detroit with whom he had suggested that Marina contact upon her arrival in Michigan. Of course, that's for the English language class, 8-week class. Ford advised he would contact Dallas office concerning any information he receives concerning activities of Marina Oswald.
My money is on the fact that she left some DNA in Detroit.
Yes. So next we have here, this is in March 15th of 65. And this is from the special agents in charge of Detroit, which you think would be the home office for the University of Michigan. And I went to school in Michigan. Michigan State represent. So it's like an hour and a half-ish from Detroit. Actually, University of Michigan is closer. But
8 miles closer than that.
Yeah, 8 Mile, exactly. Dr. John C. Catford, Director, English Language Institute, University of Michigan, advised. So here they have the head of the language school being informant as well. I mean, in the 60s, I mean, everyone was an informant, I feel. That subject completed her course of training at the University of Michigan at 65 and was to depart Ann Arbor and return to her family in Dallas, Texas. I'm sure he meant Richardson. He advised that subject gave no indication of returning for subsequent enrollment at the University of Michigan. On receipt of verification of subject's residence at Dallas, Detroit will close its file. So this special agent in charge is like, please, when she gets back to Dallas, get me out of here. Let me close this file. And this, Mr. Rob, is relating to the marriage of Marina and Mr. Porter. And this is an urgent FBI document on 6/1/1965. Urgent, very urgent, as you'll see by the wording. Mrs. Deaklenford. So you have not Mr., but Mrs. as well, right? I'm sure they had different roles in a sense, in terms of like maybe Marina talks about like the woman things more at that time, right? A friend of the subject advised today, Marina is to be married today. Thanks for repeating that twice. To Kenneth J. Porter, an employee of Texas Instruments, Dallas. Mrs. Ford stated that Porter and Marina have known each other for approximately 3 weeks, Rob.
Marina loves those whirlwind romances, man.
He's a catch. I mean, you can't deny that.
I think she knew Oswald for like 3 weeks before she married that dude too.
And probably Webster for less, if allegedly.
Oh, you sex me so good, I marry you.
Investigation.
Put the ring
on it. An investigation reflects Porter. Is employed at Texas Instruments, Dallas, since September 159 in Materials and Controls, Dallas Division, as technician foreman. Salary, blah, blah, blah. Residence, blah, blah, blah. He has a high school education. Personal record is satisfactory. Mrs. Ford advised Marina and Porter will be married at some small town in Oklahoma across the Texas line to avoid waiting period in Texas. Damn, they were in a rush, Rob.
Yeah, man. Got to get it done. Got to get it in.
Yeah, when you get it, when you gotta get it in, you
shotgun wedding. He done knocked her up.
Shit. Dallas indices negative concerning Porter, so they obviously looked into him. Marina presently owns home at blah blah blah, Richardson, Texas, and which residence she will maintain after marriage. So here they are. I think this is like a before the wedding. It happened this day or the next day. And it actually, so they did try to get married in Oklahoma, Rob, and they got a blood test there. I didn't know that in the 60s you needed to get blood tests to confirm your marriage. I swear to God.
Yeah, because they figured you weren't related, you know?
Oh, yeah? Was that the reason?
You all got the same blood type. Y'all can't get married. Y'all gonna have them inbred children.
And we have a few. I found a few articles which are based.
All I can say is, Freddie, Marina must have had that good. You know what I mean? Like good.
That good honey.
Yeah, that
pot.
good
honey pot. Yeah, that's a PG-13 word in a sense, right, Rob? Do you want to know a funny story? Since I don't think my girlfriend will get 2 hours into the 2 hours 10 minutes into the show.
What do you mean?
I accuse her of being a honey trap. I'm like, you're just a honey trap. I say this to her consistently, and she gets pissed at it. But I want to show one more thing, Rob, because I know we're getting really long here.
We are. That's what
we
she
are.
said.
But yeah, I mean, hey, we're long like James Herbert Martin, allegedly. I came across this, Rob, and this is going to tie this up nicely. 3/23/65 newspaper article from the Dallas Times Herald, and it talks about Marina going after Lee's estate. And this is very interesting because I was wondering if Lee's estate meant like intellectual property, copyright, books type of thing, right? Or did it mean actual property? And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. But Marina Oswald has filed and appointed 3 appraisers to, or has filed an application, blah, blah, in Dallas County Probate Court to become an administrator of the estate of Lee Harvey Oswald. The community administration application was filed last week in Judge Bartlett's court. Judge Lou Sterrett appointed 3 appraisers to inventory the property owned by Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't know about you, Rob, but I didn't know any physical property in terms of houses or land that Lee Harvey owned. I could be wrong.
We didn't. I'm sure they're talking about personal property, like his rings, his clothes, his rifles, guns, anything she could probably sell to get money.
That are in FBI custody, I think. Or
Dallas police.
Yeah, she's trying to get this property back, and you have to wonder if that's for money. But the next thing, the appraisers are Robert M. Martin Jr. Not a J. Martin, but
not a J. Martin.
It still counts. And Chuck Carcel, Blaylock, both local attorneys. They got a lot of attorneys in Dallas named Martin. And Harry Holmes McKay. I'm just kidding. Harry H. McKay, administrative assistant. So I guess one of the appraisers was an administrative assistant. If Mrs. Oswald is named administrator, she will handle the property. Okay, that's okay. But this is really interesting here. The application points out that Oswald left no will and has interest in the community property, consequently passes to their 2 children, June and Rachel. Application is filed in federal district court, and it has included the declaration of her intention to become a U.S. citizen. Mrs. Oswald's attorney, William Blaylock, has 60 days to file an inventory of Oswald's property. So I'm wondering, is that like, tell us what the items are and we'll let you know if we have them type of thing? I don't know. At this time, the 3 appraisers, including the Robert Martin Jr. guy, then decided whether to appoint the administrator. But the interesting thing is she wasn't an administrator of a trust, right? Which is mean you have like kind of carte blanche to kind of,
Well, I don't think he had any assets, like liquid assets.
Right. But I think that's what they're talking
about. Trust.
They're either talking about items that Lee had that was in some type of custody that she could sell, or intellectual property is how I kind of read it, because I don't think it's physical property. A community administrator differs from administrators of a trust, as normally named, said the judge, in that the community administrators are entitled to settle the estate without further proceedings in court. And that was the sentence that really put it together for me, because we've talked about how Marina probably had a case against the FBI in terms of civil court and suing. And, this is essentially a process to give her
right. I mean, the FBI had control of everything until the Warren Commission report had come out in late 64. No. So by then, their investigation's done.
Yeah,
I know, but the report and the investigation was done in 64. The report came out at the end of September or the beginning of October of 64. So she should have got her stuff back after that is concluded. But she had to go through these steps to get it in 65.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it seems that, because, I mean, fun fact, I used to work on creating trusts for clients with Merrill Lynch.
Oh, that sounds
and
like fun.
It wasn't. But I've
I'm
never
joking.
I've never effing heard of a community administrator. And I was like, what is this? And it seems that it's something to make sure that it doesn't go to court, to settle outside of court. And why would the FBI not want deposition and other things to become public record? I think we answered that in previous episodes.
Yeah. Still a lot to cover up there, you know.
A lot still. So they're trying to cover up and and it's very interesting.
Yeah. And they were watching Marina at various stages throughout her life, what she was doing, where she was working, how she was obtaining money, things like that, who she was talking to. And so now we get into the 70s. This is the last thing I got, Joe. Just real quick. And of course, everybody knows what happened to George de Mohrenschildt in the 70s. Before he was called to testify for the House Select Committee, he allegedly decommissioned himself in Florida after speaking with author Edward Epstein. So, you know, a guy that's lived a life like de Mohrenschildt, you know, world traveler, money, women, kids, nice houses, important friends, people like that. They don't just donk themselves off for no reason. Okay? You got to figure this guy was scared to testify to the House Select Committee. Okay? So, remember when I told you about this dude? Let me show you all what he looks like. Jay Walton Moore. Okay? Through the years. Now, remember I said that he retired, allegedly, in 1977 in the middle of the House Select Committee on Assassinations investigation. Now, he was called to testify, and he did admit to meeting with de Mohrenschildt. And I have here, man, this is a doozy. This is a CIA document dated March 18th, 1977. And it's from the Dallas field office to the chief of the Domestic Contact Division. Now, this wasn't approved for release by the CIA until 2006, if that tells you anything. It was not let go in the first round by any means.
15 years after the JFK Act.
Yeah. The subject is Media Inquiry into the Disappearance of George de Mohrenschildt. Report of alleged CIA agent Morris Bishop meeting with Lee Harvey Oswald before Kennedy assassination. That's the subject of this memo. And this memo is written by Jay Walton Moore in 1977. And this thing is marked secret. It's stamped warning, noticed, do not disseminate outside the agency. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. Secret, you name it. All right, so this is what it says in the memo. Bob Serkin, a news commentator for WFAA in Dallas, Texas, called the office on March 16th and asked to talk to Jim Moore. He's referring to himself. This is written by him, okay? He said he wanted to come by with a camera crew and interview Moore concerning his knowledge and connection with George de Mohrenschildt, who had disappeared somewhere in Europe. See attached clipping from the Dallas Times-Herald of 17 March. Now, this is when de Mohrenschildt is in Europe with Willem Oltmans, and Oltmans is like keeping him prisoner in his hotel room and trying to bang him and all this stuff over there.
Yeah, he ran away.
Yeah.
he ran away from his farm, and this was in the book Our Man in Haiti, and it's a crazy set of circumstances.
Yeah, that's a whole crazy story.
Great continuation.
Moore declined to be interviewed. Now, this is so weird reading this, how he wrote it in third person, right? Moore declined to be interviewed, at which time Sirkin said that he had some information that Moore should know about. Moore again declined. No, I don't want to hear it. And suggested Sirkin report his information to the FBI or to the Sprague Committee. On March 17th, Sirkin again called and said that he had some important information to tell Moore. He said that he would not ask any questions and that the conversation would be off the record. Moore again refused to see him, but gave him the name and phone number of Dennis Barron. Moore immediately called Barron, explaining the situation, and asked Barron to try to get Sirkin off his back. After talking to Sirkin, Barron called Moore back and suggested that if Moore refused to discuss the assassination or give Sirkin any information, that he saw no objection to Moore seeing Sirkin, but that Moore should use his own judgment and the decision should be his and his alone. Intrigued, Moore called Sirkin back and arranged a meeting. At the meeting, Sirkin was very cordial. He asked if the name Morris Bishop meant anything to Moore, and when Moore answered in the negative, Sirkin advised that a Cuban had reported that he had met with a CIA agent named Morris Bishop and Lee Harvey Oswald in the 505 North Hervé building approximately a month before President Kennedy was assassinated. The Cuban related that at that time the CIA agent had offered money to Lee Harvey Oswald to kill President Kennedy. Sirkin said that it was a common knowledge that the CIA had offices in the 505 Hervé building at the time of the assassination, and it was being reported around town that Morris Bishop was an alias being used by Jim Moore. On Sirkin's 10 p.m. news program on WFAA, he mentioned the supposed meeting in the 505 Hervé building between the Cuban, Morris Bishop, and Lee Harvey Oswald, but did not mention his meeting with Moore or use Moore's name on his broadcast as he had promised not to. Sirkin impressed Moore as an honest, conscientious news reporter who is not the type of person who would seek cheap publicity at the expense of the agency. Under the circumstances, it is Moore's opinion that he was fortunate to have met with Sirkin. If Sirkin had reported on his news broadcast of a rumored connection between Moore and Morris Bishop, it is believed that that considerable unfavorable publicity might have occurred. Jay Walton Moore. Now look again at the fella, Jay Walton Moore.
Yes.
In 1963, there in the middle, that's what he would have looked like when he allegedly met with Lee Harvey Oswald using the alias of Morris Bishop. Get it? Morris Bishop.
Yeah, I do.
And do you think that resembles the sketch of, Maurice Bishop that allegedly Vesiana gave?
Yeah, that was allegedly David Atlee Phillips.
Well, that's what they tried to say. But what if it was really Jay Walton Moore and not him? Because I will pop. Let me pop up a picture of this. I should have done this ahead of time. And did a collage.
Okay. And I don't know, of course, who Maurice Bishop was. But you would think, in theory, Jay Walton Moore, Domestic Contacts Division, over someone who was pretty much in propaganda, right? Which would be David Atlee Phillips.
Right, there you go. Look.
Yeah.
Now, remember, 1963, he's going to be in the middle. Possible?
Very possible.
Non possible.
I'd say very possible for sure. I never quite believed the Atlee Phillips Bishop thing.
Well, I didn't believe the Atlee Phillips either, but what if it was this dude?
It's very plausible, in my opinion. And what I was saying was, I think that would be more plausible than him being Moore, Jay Walton Moore than David Atlee Phillips, because I don't think David Atlee Phillips was meeting with assets or agents.
No, he's a top dog. He's not meeting with cutouts.
Yeah. Right.
But this guy would. And you're damn right, bungled. Wow.
And South of the West with an epic comment. Looks like DB Cooper. Wow. We might have to go on a deep time on that one.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, Lordy. But anyway, Joe, I think we got to call it, man. It's been the longest one ever.
I know. Well, it was due.
And our people stayed with us, man. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us for all this time. You know, we love you guys, and we love hanging out with you and talking about the assassination. And it's cool seeing some new folks coming in and talking. And
yes,
it's always good to see, for sure. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And Joe, you got anything to tell the people before we get up out of here?
I just want to say, have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next Friday. We might even have a surprise in the meantime. TBD.
TSBD. All right, folks, that's it for us for this week. Make sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to get notified every time we go live or drop an episode. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. And from the bottom of our little hearts, peace. We out.